Hi everybody, Sunday, October 14th, 2018. Slinging out some honey today. We've gone through, and at a restaurant supply you can pick up these buckets, and these measuring buckets seem to work out good that this screen sits on. So your cappings you can sit there and drain. That is the amount that's drained, and then I flipped it over from there into this other one, which in turn is just to see how much more comes out of it. From the extractor, we got a good little over 4 gallons in that bucket. And then on the extractor, we've got another bucket that has about 2 gallons or so in it right now. And there's still about 1 gallon in the extractor. And we're going to talk a little bit about this extractor. This is a Vivo that actually came from Amazon, and I used it for the spring honey extraction. It's a 4 frame, or you can fit 8 in of the mediums, so you can fit 4 standard deep frames or 8 of the other. Personally, I think just doing 4 this direction seems to work out the best. You do it for just a minute or so, flip them around. Of course, you'd have all 4 so it's balanced. Flip them around and then follow it around and spin that side out for about 5 minutes. Flip them back around for 5 minutes, and there you go. But this Vivo, I looked at some of the other ones. I had a hand crank that I had never actually used, but I had gotten, and decided let's try an electric one, because that's a lot of hand cranking. So I'm very pleased with it. I had one problem at the very beginning, and what it is, in the very bottom where the shaft connects and goes in, there's a bearing down in there, and it's just a single ball. But the problem I had was stainless steel likes to galled up, and when I say galled up, it'll like weld itself to each other. Stainless steel is notorious for doing that type of stuff. But anyway, what I had to do, it actually almost like locked up, got real tight where the motor didn't want to spin it. And that was on the first use. I pulled it out. I used some sandpaper, some emery cloth sandpaper, cleaned it up, and used just the tiniest amount of, you have to use food grade, get food grade grease. And when I say a small amount, I mean we're talking not even a tiny amount, about a bead about the size of a BB. Put that on there, put it back together, and it's run for hours and had no problem at all with it. So pretty good, pretty good. I don't know, obviously if you're doing commercial work, it's not going to work. It wouldn't be a good idea. But for a hobbyist or for small time, pretty good. Hot knife. Decided let's try a hot knife. I traditionally had used just a serrated knife by hand. You can feel what you're doing. You can kind of saw through it. You could use a bread knife. Of course, this here's for any shallow comb that doesn't get cut off by the knife. We got a little bit of cut comb. Just kind of a side note. If you notice, this is really, really yellow because this was drawn out during the nectar flow of the fall that included primarily the goldenrod. So when they're using all that goldenrod, it makes that comb and honey really yellowy, as opposed to in the springtime really white. So different seasons, different types of flowers can produce different colors of combs. This one will be a little stronger. There again, I personally was not impressed with a hot knife. I think that the serrated, a bread knife or something to that effect is just as well. So it goes through. We take the knife, come through. Of course, you've all seen all kinds of videos, and go through and uncap this. Now we look at this frame. This frame's borderline. It has about 75% capped. Now, what I did is I took a toothpick and I reached down into a couple of them open cells and used this refractometer here, made specifically to check the moisture content of honey. You put a little bit on there, flip that over, look through the eyepiece, and in there it's got a little chart. You can dial it in like a pair of binoculars, adjust this here so you can see properly, and you'll see the line and it'll tell you the moisture content. The moisture content that I got was right around 15.5%. As long as they say under 20%, I'd rather be, more like under 18, but we're good to go. If you get up into that 20%, you run a real high risk of the honey actually fermenting, and you have hard honey like hard cider instead of just plain honey. So do a quick little demonstration here. Come on over here, helper, and let's do the most satisfying part of slicing off. There again, the hot knife, it worked okay, but I just wasn't impressed with it. It seemed like when you first started cutting into you get a couple inches in and it loses its heat, loses its ability, and then it just goes so slow. I can go in with a serrated knife and do just as well. So this is one of the most satisfying videos you'll ever see. I don't know, everybody's got their own way. This is just how I do it. And just come in, I like to come in a few inches below and slowly work it up. Let that knife follow the wood. And as you follow that wood, it'll just release that right off of there, just moving it back and forth. Now another side note here that I'm going to put in there, I saw some videos recently of, look at that, just oozing out, just beautiful. And if my moisture content was around 16.5 on the open cells, the upper cells, I did about 10 tests through several frames as I went along here, and my average was around anywhere from 15 to 16. Which is plenty acceptable. But even if these ones that I checked here were 16 and then the ones inside are more like around 15, that little bit that's not capped, there's just too much nice honey here to not harvest it. Something else along the way, because we've run into here, is now we've started, our high temperatures only in the 50s. It's only like 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Just 6 days ago it was 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the next 7 days there's nothing forecast above the 50s. So basically the bees are just about shutting down. So now that we've done that, let's say you've got a little bit, follow it up with this little uncapper here. If there was a little edge or something, you would just go just make sure it's uncapped. But if we look at this real close, this was actually, you can see how dark it is. This was actually brood comb. There is no problem. You can see by looking at the honey within there is perfectly, this is perfectly acceptable and normal. No problem at all to harvest. This comb will not impart any taste. There's nothing unclean or anything at all about it. The bees have gone back and backfilled it and capped it over. There's not one bit, it's fine. But something that I saw on that other video, the cut comb honey, somebody took some that was brood comb and had harvested it as cut comb honey. That's not you don't want to eat that wax. It's not going to hurt you per se, but that wax there was just drawn out over a couple weeks in late September during the goldenrod flow. Fresh, quick. It wasn't drawn out. It wasn't, cut comb honey is completely a different topic than extracted honey. So, do one more here, same thing. Now this one, we're going to be a little closer and have to rely just a little bit more. You know, do you go up? Do you go down? Do you do some of each? Not necessarily a right way or a wrong way. So essentially what you do then is just take this here and you just pop this off of here. Just real light. We're trying to preserve this comb because in the springtime, this comb will be invaluable. We pop this comb into the hive, and even if you only got a few frames, if you don't have a whole lot, put some of this drawn extracted comb in between blank foundation or starter strips, whatever, and this just, the wax will draw the bees up and encourage them to come up and build in the wax. So basically at that point we've got both sides uncapped. We put it into the extractor. Try not to drip. One nice thing about doing it in the kitchen, how do you talk your wife into letting you use the kitchen for honey extraction? Just, hey, when I'm done, I'll clean the kitchen. I'll wipe everything off. I'll mop the floor, and you're good to go. Now, my wife's, I'm really lucky. She's a good sport. She also enjoys the honey too, which is good. But anyway, so that's basically it. I'm not gonna, you can find hundreds of videos of watching an extractor spin. But that's how I do it. It's not the right way, it's not the wrong way, it's just how I do it. Thanks for watching, everybody.